2 Kings 4. Elisha helped a poor widow. One day the widow of one of the Lord's prophets said to Elisha, "You know that before my husband died, he was a follower of yours and a worshipper of the Lord. But he owed the man some money, and now that man is on his way to take my 2 sons as his slaves. Maybe there's something I can do to help." Elisha said, "What do you have in your house?" "Sir, I have nothing but a small bottle of olive oil." Elisha told her, "Ask your neighbors for their empty jars, and after you've brought as many as you can, go home and shut the door behind you and your sons. Then begin filling the jars with oil and set each one aside as you fill it." The woman left. Later, when she and her sons were back inside their house, the 2 sons brought her the jars, and she began filling them. At last, she said to one of her sons, "Bring me another jar." "We don't have any more," he answered, and the oil stopped flowing from the small bottle. After she told Elisha what had happened, he said, "Sell the oil and use part of the money to pay what you owe the man. You and your sons can live on what is left." Elisha brings the rich woman's son back to life. Once, while Elisha was in the town of Shunem, he met a rich woman who invited him to her home for dinner. After that, whenever he was in Shunem, he would have a meal there with her and her husband. Sometime later, the woman said to her husband, "I'm sure the man who comes here so often is a prophet of God. Why don't we build him a small room on the flat roof of our house? We can put a bed, a table and chair, and an oil lamp in it. Then whenever he comes, he can stay with us." The next time Elisha was in Shunem, he stopped at their house and went up to his room to rest. He said to his servant Gehazi, "This woman has been very helpful. Have her come up here to the roof for a moment." She came, and Elisha told Gehazi to say to her, "You've gone to a lot of trouble for us, and we want to help you. Is there something we can request the king or army commander to do?" The woman answered, "With my relatives nearby, I have everything I need." "Then what can we do for her?" Elisha asked Gehazi. Gehazi replied, "I do know that her husband is old and that she doesn't have a son. Ask her to come here again." Elisha told his servant. He called for her, and she came and stood in the doorway of Elisha's room. Elisha said to her, "Next year at this time, you'll be holding your own baby son in your arms. You're a man of God. The woman replied, "Please don't lie to me." But for a few months later, the woman got pregnant. She gave birth to a son just as Elisa had promised. One day, while the boy was still young, he was out in the field with his father, where the workers were harvesting the crops. Suddenly he shouted, "My head hurt! It hurt a lot! Carry him back to his mother." The father said to his servant. The servant picked up the boy and carried him to his mother. The boy lay on her lap all morning, and by noon he was dead. She carried him upstairs to Elisa's room and laid him across the bed. Then she walked out and shut the door behind her. The woman called to her husband, "I need to see the prophet. Let me use one of the donkeys. Send the servant along with me, and let me leave now, so I can get back quickly." Why do you need to see him today?" her husband asked. "It's not the Sabbath or time for the new moon festival." "That's all right," she answered. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Let's go, and don't slow down unless I tell you to." She left at once for Mount Carmel to talk with Elisa. When Elisa saw her coming, he said, "Gehazi, look, it's the woman from Sunem. Run and meet her and ask her if everything is all right with her and her family." "Everything is fine," she answered Gehazi. But as soon as she got to the top of the mountain, she went over and grabbed Elisa by the feet. Gehazi started toward her to push her away. When Elisa said, "Leave her alone. Don't you see how sad she is? But the Lord hasn't told me why." The woman said, "Sir, I beg you not to get my hopes up. And I didn't even ask you for a son." "Gehazi, get ready and go to her house." Elisa said, "Take along my walking stick, and when you get there, lay it on the boy's face. Don't stop to talk to anyone, even if they try to talk to you." But the boy's mother said to Elisa, "I swear by the living Lord and by your own life that I won't live without you." So Elisa got up and went with them. Gehazi ran on ahead and laid Elisa's walking sticks on the boy's face. But the boy didn't move or make a sound. Gehazi ran back to Elisa and said, "The boy didn't wake up." Elisa arrived at the woman's house and went straight to his room, where he saw the boy's body on his bed. He walked in, shut the door, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and stretched out over the dead body with his mouth on the boy's mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hand. As he lay there, the boy's body became warm. Elisa got up and walked back and forth in the room. Then he went back and leaned over the boy's body. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. Elisa called out to Gehazi, "Ask the boy's mother to come here." Gehazi did, and when she was at the door, Elisa said, "You can take your son." She came in and bowed down at Elisa's feet. Then she picked up her son and left. Elisa makes some stew taste better. Later, Elisa went back to Gilgal, where there was almost nothing to eat because the crops had failed. One day, while the prophet who lived there were meeting with Elisa, he said to his servant, "Prepare a big pot of stew for these prophets." One of them went out into the woods to gather some herbs. He found the wild vine and picked as much of its fruit as he could carry, but he didn't know that the fruit was very sour. When he got back, he cut up the fruit and put it in the stew. The stew was served, and when the prophets started eating it, they shouted, "Elisa, this stew tastes terrible. We can't eat it. Bring me some flour." Elisa said. He sprinkled the flour in the stew and said, "Now serve it to them." And the stew tasted fine. Elisa feeds 100 people. A man from the town of Baal-Sarsha brought Elisa some freshly cut grain and 20 loaves of bread made from the first berry that was harvested. Elisa said, "Give it to the people so they can eat. There is not enough here for 100 people." His servant said, "Just give it to them." Elisa replied, "The Lord has promised there will be more than enough." So the servant served the bread and grain to the people. They ate and still had some left over, just as the Lord had promised. 2 Kings 5. Elisa healed Naaman. Naaman was the commander of the Syrian army. The Lord had helped him and his troops defeat their enemies. So the king of Syria respected Naaman very much. Naaman was the brave soldier, but he had leprosy. One day while the Syrian troops were raiding Israel, they captured the girl and she became a servant of Naaman's wife. Sometime later, the girl said, "If your husband Naaman will go to the prophet in Samaria, he will be cured of his leprosy." When Naaman told the king what the girl had said, the king replied, "Go ahead, I will give you a letter to take to the king of Israel." Naaman left and took along 30,000 pieces of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 new outfits. He also carried a letter to the king of Israel. It said, "I am sending my servant Naaman to you. Would you cure him of his leprosy?" When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes in fear and shouted, "The Syrian king believes I can cure this man of leprosy. Does he think I'm God with power over life and death? He must be trying to pick a fight with me." As soon as Elisa the prophet heard what had happened, he sent the Israelites to king this message. Why are you so afraid? Send the man to me, so that he will know there is a prophet in Israel. Naaman left his horses and carriage and stopped at the door of Elisa's house. Elisa sent someone outside to say to him, "Go wash 7 times in the Jordan River. Then you will be completely cured." But Naaman stormed off, grooming. "Why couldn't I come out and talk to me? I thought for sure he would stand in front of me and pray to the Lord his God, then wave his hand over my skin and cure me. What about the Abana River or the Parpar River? Those rivers in Damascus are just good as any river in Israel. I could have washed in them and been cured." His servant went over to him and said, "Sir, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, you'd have done it. So why don't you do what he said? Go wash and be cured." Naaman walked down to the Jordan. He waded out into the water and stood down in it 7 times, just as Elisa had told him. At once he was cured, and his skin became as smooth as a child. Naaman and his officers went back to Elisa. Naaman stood in front of him and announced, "Now I know that the Lord of Israel is the only God in the whole world. Sir, would you please accept a gift from me? I am a servant of the living Lord," Elisa answered, "and I swear I will not take anything from you." Naaman kept begging, but Elisa kept refusing. Finally, Naaman said, "If you won't accept the gift, then please let me take home as much soil as 2 mules can pull in a wagon. Sir, from now on I will offer sacrifices only to the Lord. But I pray that the Lord will forgive me when I go into the temple of the God Rimmon and bow down there with the king of Syria." "Go on home and don't worry about that," Elisa replied. Then Naaman left. Elisa places a curse on Gehazi. After Naaman had gone on a short distance, Gehazi said to himself, "Elisa let that Syrian off too easy. He should have taken Naaman's gift. I swear by the living Lord that I will talk to Naaman myself and get something from him." So he hurried after Naaman. When Naaman saw Gehazi running after him, he got out of his chariot to meet him. Naaman asked, "Is everything all right?" "Yes," Gehazi answered, "but my master has sent me to tell you about 2 young prophets from the hills of Ephraim. They came asking for help, and now Elisa wants to know if you would give them 3,000 pieces of silver and some new clothes." "Sure," Naaman replied, "but why don't you take twice that amount of silver?" He convinced Gehazi to take it all, then put the silver in 2 bags. He handed the bags and the clothes to his 2 servants, and they carried them for Gehazi. When they reached the hill where Gehazi lived, he took a bag for the servants and placed them in his house, then sent the men away. After they had gone, Gehazi went in and stood in front of Elisha, who asked, Gehazi, where have you been? Nowhere, sir, Gehazi answered. Elisha asked, don't you know that my spirit was there when Naaman got out of his chariot to talk with you? Gehazi, you have no right to accept my money or clothes, or live, or card, or vineyard, sheep, or cattle, or servant, because of what you've done. Naaman leprosy will now be on you and your descendant forever. Suddenly, Gehazi's skin became white with leprosy, and he left.